Hello there guys, what is going on? Son of Chelsea back here again for another video, and it is time once again for another long form discussion with a great Chelsea guest. I've been wanting to get this guy on the channel for a while to have a discussion about transfers and Chelsea, and finally I've got him. He's a Chelsea FC blogger for Talk Chelsea and Chelsea News. He's also the founder of a place that I write for, the Chelsea Echo, and he's got over 70k followers on Twitter. Simon Phillips, welcome to the channel, mate. Great to have you on.
Thank you very much, Daniel. It's good to be here, mate.
Definitely, and these sort of strange times at the moment where we're sort of thinking that the Premier League could resume soon, it might not resume. How have you found it? Because, of course, reporting on Chelsea for so long now and talking about Chelsea daily and transfer news and news updates, how has it been for you the current time?
It's difficult. I mean, there's literally nothing going on. There's nothing to write about. Obviously, 50% of my work will be opinion articles. So there's no football being played. So there's nothing to discuss in that sense. I mean, the transfer news, we're getting it come through, but you got to think: is it, in these times, is it feasible that Chelsea are actually going to be going to spend a lot of money? It's been difficult. I mean, luckily Twitter is still quite busy, so that's been my saviour at the moment, and talking about various things and debates on Twitter is what's been keeping me going.
Definitely, and I think that's one of the things. You just, even if football isn't here, I think we still talk about Chelsea, and of course there's so much passion for it online, and luckily there's so many places now that talk about Chelsea and you can go to and sort of get content for. And I know, because all of this about like Project Restart, which I just want to get a quick opinion from you on about sort of the Premier League's plans to move forward, potentially getting a return. Of course, it's all down to the government. It's all down to whether they can get the tests. What do you think about this? Is it a good plan or a bad plan?
I think I'm not against it for a start, but like as you touched upon, the only way it can go ahead is if the government allow it. So if the government deem it safe and they have the various equipment to do it, and it's not going to affect the NHS in any way, shape, or form, then if the government say it's safe, then I'm for it. But otherwise, if there's any doubt whatsoever, or it is going to affect the NHS, or as Frank Lampard said today, if any of the tests and equipment that they need is going to be taken away from that front line, then absolutely not. It shouldn't even be thought about.
Yeah, that's my most sort of moral concern about this whole thing of that sort of dreadful situation where the Premier League, because it wants to get football back starting, we take services and we take people away from places they should be currently. And it is that sort of fine balance. I've been listening to a lot of people. I'm not so extreme on like this. I'm not like, oh, we've got to void the season and just void the season no matter what, and in the opposite direction, but we just got to play it. Like, I'm sort of, for me, it's like, if it's right, then we should do it. I'd love to see the season completed, but there's some days I wake up when I think I'm not sure if it's going to get completed, and then other days I wake up and I think actually maybe it will. So it's one of those things, and as you said, I think government is hopefully over the next week we'll get some more clarity about it. Of course, for people who talk about football like you and me on a regular basis, it'd be lovely to have football back, but only if it's safe. Of course, people know you for transfers and your sort of transfer news and reporting on transfer news for Chelsea. I want to talk to you and ask you about, you're writing an article currently about how COVID-19 is going to affect Chelsea in a transfer window. So you just want to touch on that, of what you're writing about and sort of your opinion on the situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going around at the moment. And at the end of the day, nobody knows what Chelsea are going to do. Nobody knows what they're thinking. Before all this came around, obviously there was big stories that Chelsea are going to be doing a massive rebuild in the summer. And I at this point in time, I wouldn't rule it out still. But I think what I've written about in this article is they're going to have to be wiser. I think Frank Lampard's going to have to be wiser in who he wants to bring in. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect to see 2 or 3 world-class players coming in. But instead of that, I think that Chelsea might need to go down the route of chasing one big signing, one marquee signing. So Jadon Sancho or Philippe Coutinho, one of those two. And I think as well as them, you're going to have to fill the squad up with either free agents or players who are a lot cheaper. Alex Telles, with his buyout clause, is around 35 million. So I think Chelsea are going to have to be a lot wiser. I mean, all the reports were, Ben Chilwell, Jadon Sancho, they're going to be expensive. So I don't think we're going to be looking at getting both of those players or even more than that. I think rather we're going to have to look at some free agents, and that's what I've touched upon in this article. So alternatives, obviously, Dries Mertens is going to be a free agent in June, at the end of June. So I think that type of player is who they're going to need to come in, rather than spending sort of 45 million on Moussa Dembele or Timo Werner. I think they're going to have to get someone like Mertens to come in because he's free, but he's also still going to add quality to the squad at the same time. And the same in the goalkeeper department. I think actually me and you had a conversation online about Ben Foster from Watford. They're going to have to look at someone like that, because they're not going to sell Kepa in this window, in the situation that we're in, for the amount of money that they would want. I mean, he's a club record signing. They're not going to sell him this summer and lose money on him. That's just not going to happen. So bringing Ben Foster in would give good backup, good experience, and actually a quality goalkeeper still, even though he's in his late 30s. But that's, that type of deal, rather than get someone like Andre Onana from Ajax, who's going to probably be around 35, 40 million as well. So those two signings, if you get Mertens and if you get Foster, you've saved yourself 80 million there already. And that could go towards a deal for Sancho or Coutinho, who I touched upon earlier. And then obviously the Alex Telles for left back. Left back is obviously a position that Frank Lampard wants to improve. So go and get Telles for 35 million, trigger his release clause. Do that rather than spend 70 odd, 80 odd million on Ben Chilwell. Again, you're saving yourself money there. And then also on the end of this article, a few sort of bonus additions, if you like. I think this might not get a good reaction, but I don't see, if Chelsea are not going to spend a lot of money, I want Koulibaly, obviously, from Napoli. The stories come out today about that. I would love for Chelsea to sign him, and he shouldn't actually be too expensive. However, if you can't get him, what about Jan Vertonghen from Tottenham? I know he's 33 years old, but he's also going to be a free agent. So a player like that comes in with experience, Premier League experience. He's a leader. He's dominant in the box. That might be the kind of deal that we might have to look at instead. And another example of that for left back is Kurzawa from PSG. He's also going to be a free agent. I mean, he's obviously heavily linked with Barcelona at the minute. But again, something like that, I've just put it on the end of the article. It might have to be looking at a deal like that rather than spending a lot of money. And I put at the bottom there the total spend, if you do those 5 deals, the total spend of 125 million, which should be doable even with the situation.
Yeah, definitely a lot of interesting names in there, and I think it is true. And for me, it's like the matching of understanding how troublesome this situation is for clubs, and also the way Chelsea as a club have been operating as well. I mean, if you match those two things together, that would lead you in a direction, if you just look at our recent windows, to make you believe we're not going to spend a lot, because Chelsea aren't doing that anymore like they used to. As much as maybe FFP being relaxed could mean that Roma could spend. I mean, I still think Chelsea, from everything I hear, and I'm sure the same as you, it's like they want to be self-sustainable. They want to be a club that is bringing in money as well. So it's I can't see those ridiculous windows that we used to have back in the day, because as well, there's more sharks in the water now. It's not the same situation. Chelsea were able to do that 15 years ago. I think I like all the names you shout. I think Dries Mertens, I've spoken about him on the channel. I think that'd be a great addition. I think if we're just looking at striker, if you like if Chelsea can only sign like 3 players this summer, let's say, and we're looking at key positions, I think that's perfect. I think it's the perfect type of player to bring in. He's got bags of experience. I think he could be a first team player that Lampard could lean on. I think Tammy could learn from him. If we get Champions League football, I think that's a perfect player to bring in for those European nights. And if Giroud stays, you've got, let's hope if that contract extension does get confirmed, he's a great player to bring in. And I agree, Ben Foster, there's like this sort of sometimes disrespect towards people like Ben Foster because of the name, because he plays for Watford. But I'm like, you've got to look at, if we're getting a second choice keeper like we had with Willy Caballero, you're always going to limit yourself, because if players are going to come in knowing that there's a chance they're going to sit on the bench, you'll usually have to go for someone older, usually someone getting close to the end of their careers. And I think Ben Foster, just look at any Chelsea fan who's doubtful about Ben Foster, watch his performance against us in November. He was absolutely incredible that night.
Yeah.
And I think that all those names you mentioned, it's interesting to me with Telles, because of course with left back for me is top of my list in terms of this is what I want Chelsea to invest in.
Yeah.
If those deals, as you said, on some of those other players, maybe centre back, striker, if there was another position in their goalkeeper, if Chelsea were to find a cheaper option, would you be someone to say, instead of going after Jadon Sancho, why not go after Ben Chilwell or go after someone else for a high fee? Would you, if I was to say to you, right wing or left back, where would you spend more money?
I think that depends on a lot of things. I think Chelsea still desperately need to replace. Well, I say replace. You can't replace Hazard, but I think they need to fill the void that Hazard left. So to me, that's got to be a Jadon Sancho. I think Chelsea have been really missing that one player that can be a game changer all season, and Hazard used to do that. I mean, weekly. So since we sold him, we've not had that, and I think to me that is what makes that the most important position, closely followed by left back. But if, say, for example, you're going to spend 70 odd million on Ben Chilwell, that will probably, under the circumstances, that will probably rule out buying Jadon Sancho. But then there's alternatives. So I think Chelsea actually tried to loan Philippe Coutinho back in January. So I think that any deal for him would be, they'd want to loan him. And Barcelona actually, I think, turned down a loan offer from Chelsea recently, but because they wanted to put a clause into his contract to make Chelsea buy him at the end of it, but Chelsea didn't want to do that. So they want a permanent deal. But if Chelsea could convince them to loan Coutinho for a season, I think then we could probably look at spending more on a left back. But only then. I think we've got to go all out for Jadon Sancho as priority over a left back.
Yeah, I think that's a player that we'll probably be fighting with Man United for. I think it's probably going to be the biggest deal of the summer. If there is a big deal in the summer, you think that potentially in some sort of weird scenario, because of this pandemic, Sancho doesn't move and clubs think we're not actually going to invest that much, we'll wait. And Sancho stays at Borussia Dortmund for another year, which would seem crazy, but that's just the scenario we're in. I agree with you. I think when Serge Gnabry scored the goals against us for Bayern in February, that sort of finishing, because I'm a massive fan of Gnabry, but I think that sort of finishing we haven't seen since Eden walked out the door, that sort of world-class player. And you do need, if Chelsea, as much as Klopp has done really good work in building his team, he's still got world-class players there, so I think you're going to need to supplement this squad with some real high-quality players. I just think that, personally for me, I think that if I'm choosing, I think left-back, because I don't know. We've invested in the likes of Christian Pulisic and HUDSON-ODOI's new contract and Ziyech, and I just think it's an area that's been neglected for quite a while. So that's personally my preference, but I can understand why you do need game changers. So I know you haven't got a lot of time, so I want to move on to questions that were sent in through Twitter, which I thank you guys for. So we'll try and get through as many as we can. RV asks, how do you trust a transfer source, and can you tell if the story is legit or has no legs?
What I do is I look at a story, initially see where it comes from, see the source, make sure that the source is correct, because obviously there gets a lot of misreporting, and then I'll hang on that story for a little while and wait to see who else reports it, if anyone else comes through, and if you've got sort of 2, 3, 4 reliable sources reporting the same story, then 9 times out of 10 there's going to be a lot of truth in it. Obviously, stories get exaggerated sometimes. So if Chelsea are interested in a player, sometimes that usually means that they've just scouted him, for example. But I think you can normally tell. You've got to, as long as the main sources, so your Matt Laws and your Nazar Kinsella from Goal, if those guys start talking about it, then you know that it's got some legs.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. I think there's so many stories we talk, like Declan Rice, for instance. Matt Law talked about Declan Rice, but he only said Chelsea were interested. Interested and monitored. They're sort of words to me that don't really mean a lot. Like they sort of, because of course, these players would probably be on a list and probably be scattered, but actually going in and spending money, it's it's a different story, isn't it? Yeah. RJP Journalism asks, you can bring back one of the following: Ola Aina, Nathan Ake, or Jeremy Boga. Who do you pick and why? That's an interesting question.
Who was the first one?
Ola Aina.
Okay. Well, we don't need Aina because we've got Reece. Ake, I love Ake, but always what plays on my mind with him is his height. If he's going to play centre-back, I'd prefer my centre-backs to be a bit taller and more dominant in the air. I mean, he's got a hell of a leap on him for his height, and he's a great defender, a great player. I'd definitely have him in the squad, but if I was to choose between those three, I'd say Boga.
I would as well. I think Boga would be a really good option this summer to maybe replace Willian or Pedro. If Chelsea, I don't know, I'd just ask another follow-up question on this. There was reports a few months back about Chelsea going in and removing that buyback clause. Is that true or legitimate, or has that died down?
I haven't heard anything more about that. I think, especially in the circumstances now, that would be a lot of hassle for Chelsea to sort out. I think they've got more, bigger fish to fry rather than sorting that out. I mean, it would be a lot to do, but I mean, it would be clever, but no, I can't see them prioritizing doing that now.
Okay. So Manuel asks, this is a big debate point recently: Jorginho, stay or go?
I rate Jorginho. I think he's a brilliant midfielder, and obviously he got harshly treated when he first joined Chelsea, and then this season under Frank Lampard, he's just excelled and he surprised everybody. I think Lampard obviously loves him. I can't see Lampard wanting to sell him. Me personally, I would keep him. He wouldn't be a guaranteed starter like he has been the last 2 seasons. I think you've got people like Billy Gilmour, who at the moment, I mean, before football stopped, he was on fire. And if you're picking players on merit, you would be picking Gilmour ahead of Jorginho at the moment. But yeah, he's not a player that I'd want to sell because he needs to be in this team. He's shown that leadership again this season, and that's something that Chelsea have been missing a lot. He's obviously, Lampard sees that as well, gave him the vice captain role. So no, he's not a player that I would want to see out, but he's definitely not indispensable. And there's definitely players. I personally would start Kovacic over Jorginho in that deeper midfield role at the moment. So yeah, he wouldn't be a guaranteed starter for me, but I wouldn't sell him.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm a big fan of Jorginho. It's interesting. One of the first pieces I did for the Chelsea Echo was, I think, defending Jorginho. It was right at the start of when I think people started to turn on the Sarri. That was really interesting. And I've made a lot of videos about Jorginho and sort of my support for him. And I think he's a brilliant player. Yes, he's not sort of, I wouldn't call him a world-class player. I think he's a very key player in a sort of system. If we've got good movement in front of him, I think he's, as that Tammy goal earlier, in that assist for that Tammy goal earlier in the season was incredible. Gilmour, of course, is the future, but I think that leadership you say, I mean, if Dave's not going to play as much next season, you're sort of looking in a team who's going to lead that team, and that's something that Jorginho could potentially offer. So I definitely say stay. Dieter asks, what should Chelsea do with Ethan Ampadu? Will we sign a central defender who will leave Chelsea? I guess that's a general one, but especially Ampadu. We haven't really touched about Ampadu yet. What do you think about him?
I would bring him back, and if they're even thinking for 1 second about signing Declan Rice, then don't do it. I mean, Ampadu can be way better than Declan Rice if given the game time. I mean, he plays in that. I would play him as a defensive midfielder. He plays in that role for Wales. Ryan Giggs absolutely rates him in that position. And I think he could be brilliant. I think he could be one of the best defensive midfielders around if given the game time. He's shown it. I mean, he's shown it all his career so far. Even when he was 16, 17, just coming through, he was excellent. He's been one of the players that I've rated all along, all the way through. And I think if he gets 10 games in a row, I think he'll absolutely prove his worth. So we shouldn't even be thinking about Declan Rice. We should be handing Ampadu a squad role next season. And yeah, obviously it depends on what happens with the other midfielders, but I'd get him in. Versatile as well. He can play centre back or right back or hold in midfield. So he's definitely a player that I think that Lampard will probably bring back into the squad next season.
I think he'll definitely get a chance to impress. And, even in the short period he's had at Leipzig, he's always impressed. Every time I've watched Ethan Ampadu play, either at centre-back or in central midfield for Wales or for Chelsea or for Leipzig, he's impressed me, and that's... He just seems so certain, which for a player of his age, he just seems so decisive, which is what I love. And as you pointed out, I think the versatility, that's what makes him exciting. I mean, I've mostly been talking about him as a contender to play at centre-back because I think that's an area that if Chelsea can't, as we've been talking about, if Chelsea don't bring in a new centre-back, you're sort of looking, how could Lampard try and improve that area? Maybe Ampadu could be that player, partner up with someone.
Again, though, with Ampadu, it's like, okay, I just, it's his height. I think... because of his height, I don't think that... I mean, the thing that Chelsea have been missing in defence this season is someone who commands and controls the box. So, I mean, Lampard was unhappy with Kepa because he wasn't coming and claiming crosses and, just knocking everyone out the way, which is what Lampard wants from his goalkeeper. And his centre-backs, I mean, obviously Rudiger's pretty good in the air, Zuma's pretty good in the air, but none of them are really dominant in the box, like a Virgil van Dijk, for example, or a Koulibaly. So... if Chelsea are going to shore up that centre-back area, I think we need someone tall and big and strong and, someone who can command that 18-yard box.
Definitely, and either way, that's the good thing about Ampadu. He's got that chance. He's unlike a lot of players, he's got that ability that he could play. If it doesn't work out centre back, he could definitely slot in midfield for sure. Yeah. And the last question from Edmund, this goes about Jadon Sancho. How do you think Sancho could fit in with our wingers when we still have HUDSON-ODOI, Christian Pulisic, and Hakim Ziyech as a right winger or a centre midfielder? That's of course for Ziyech.
Well, I think. To start with, I think every club who wants to challenge for title need 4 very good wingers, and Chelsea are going to lose 2, Pedro and Willian. So I think when you've got HUDSON-ODOI, you've got Pulisic, you've got Ziyech, and if Sancho comes in or Boga or Coutinho, then I think we definitely need 4. Sancho, I think I would probably his best position is out on the left wing. But he can also play right, like HUDSON-ODOI. I think it all depends who's playing up front. So, for example, we saw a lot last season, HUDSON-ODOI playing on the right and putting crosses in for Giroud, for example, who was in the middle. And he loves those kind of crosses. So if you've got someone like Giroud in the middle, then either Tammy or Sancho could easily play on the right. They can switch. I mean, you've got the beauty of Pulisic as well. He can play anywhere across that front three. He could even play as a number 10 role. So any of them have got the ability to play on any side. And if you watch the games, they often switch in between. So as a modern day winger, I don't really class anyone as a left winger or a right winger. I think they're just a winger. So they're gonna have the ability to play on either side. So I don't think that's a problem at all. Ziyech, against us, he played very well in the 10 role. I've seen him play very well in the 10 role, but I think every Chelsea fan's dream with signing him is the second coming of Arjen Robben, cutting in on that left foot, and I'd love to see that as well. So we've got the options and we've got the choices, and I think Lampard will probably have to work out what's best, but we definitely need 4 top-class wingers.
I also think you've got that sort of those different options in young players of young wingers there, of sort of, especially with Pulisic and HUDSON-ODOI, different attributes. I think Pulisic in some cases has been forgotten by some Chelsea fans, because I thought at some point I think it's been unfair on him, because I think he's been one of Chelsea's best performers this season, but because of injury he hasn't played a lot. I think I can just imagine next season if you have Ziyech on the right and Pulisic on the left, Pulisic with that anticipation running in and getting those goals as we saw for Chelsea earlier in the season. I think he could double his numbers from this year, especially if Ziyech and Reece James especially on that right. I mean, you just think of Reece James and Ziyech, the combination. So yeah, those are the questions. And just before we wrap up, I just want to ask you, as I do with a lot of my guests, sort of your, whenever football returns in whatever shape or form it is, what are sort of your hopes for Chelsea and Lampard in the next couple of years after this sort of exciting first year with him, of bringing in young players, what Lampard wants to achieve? What do you think Lampard can achieve at Chelsea?
I don't think there's any limits. I think Lampard is an ambitious guy, and he's also a very intelligent guy. So he knows, he's got his goals, and as we've seen Lampard as the player, he wants to win everything. He wants to get to the very top, as he did as a player, and he won't stop until he gets there. So I think as long as the club continue to back him as they're doing at the moment, and as long as he continues to get the best out of the young players as what he has been doing, then I think Chelsea will definitely be up there with Liverpool and Man City again within the next 2 seasons, I think. Obviously, you know, a lot could change, a lot rests on which players they sell. He definitely needs to add quality, and I think he will. But yeah, I mean, there's no reason why Chelsea can't be back challenging for the Premier League title and the Champions League within the next 2 years.
I think that sentiment of excitement around Lampard, I think, has been sort of expressed not only with people I speak to on this channel, but, you know, in the comments on Twitter. You know, I think there's this sense that Chelsea are rebuilding and getting better again, which I think is very exciting. But thank you, Simon, for coming on the channel and having this discussion. As I do with all my guests before we wrap up, just give you the opportunity to shout out where people can find your work online.
Yeah, so I write for Talk Chelsea now, so it's just talkchelsea.net. And also Chelsea News, which is chelsea_news.co. We've got the Twitter, everything. I'm sure a lot of the guys that follow me already follow it. So yeah, thanks for reading my articles.
So all the links for Simon's work will be in the description box below, Twitter and the places he writes for, so you can go and check that out. But thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you never miss an upload. Follow me on Twitter @SonOfChelsea, and I'll see you again.